guarantee my FFA advisor would not like his farming technique. Not one bit of this guy. Because he seems to me to be careless, reckless in his seed scattering, sowing. Just lets them fall everywhere. Almost as if he has such an abundant supply of them, he doesn't care if some of them are wasted along the way. He just scatters them. That seems to me to be what Jesus is saying God is all about. He's kind of a careless farmer of truth and of good news. At least in the way that he tends to cast his good news and toss about his grace and his love. He seems to just kind of do it all over the place for anyone who will receive it. Last year, our church, St. Luke Simpson Methodist Church, took in about 100 new members. We're experiencing something of a beautiful and phenomenal growth. We probably won't, I can't say we won't, will likely not reach 100 new members this year, somewhere closer to 80, 85 new members at our church this year. That's pretty good, even though it's an off year. That's still not bad. For the 85 that join us, though, there are so many who visit, who never leave us any information about themselves so that we can follow up with them. There are some who come maybe a couple of times and then just kind of leave and fade away. There are many who do leave us their information, and it's the wrong information. We do get a few every now and then, and even if they don't leave their information, we try to look it up on the computer. We Google them or anywho them, and we try to get an address on them, and we make together a little package of a coffee mug with our name on it and some peppermints in the coffee mug and some brochures about our church and a handwritten note from one of the pastors, and that gets delivered and placed in a bag on their door for thank you for coming to visit. Of those, 15%. I'm thinking, that's pretty impressive for a preacher to sit down and write me a thank you note. I might just join that church. I'm thinking that ought to be kind of the universal trigger response. A coffee mug? I'm in. They even talk about mints after the coffee. This is a holistic church. They got all their bases covered. But do you know only 15% respond? 15%. If I could only know ahead of time who those 15% are, I could save us a bundle in mints and mugs. Not to mention gasoline going to their homes, delivering these things but I can't. And I'm not supposed to. Because that's not how the sower sows seeds. The sower does it not with efficiency, or even with effectiveness. The sower does it with abundance and exuberance. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to sow some seeds this week. At least I pray you will. Be praying for you throughout the days as you leave the revival each night. Glad the preacher finally shut up. Pleased that you've come to worship and praise, but with a charge to cast some seeds among some thorns, to spread them along the path of those who may never understand, along the rocky edges of the city of Leesville, Anacoco. And perhaps one or two, on good years, 15% may fall on good, fertile soil. And I want you to do it indiscriminately, without regard to who looks right for this congregation, or who smells right for this church, or who can give the right amount to this church. There's a young man who visited our church, not for worship, but for a handout about a year ago, earlier this year. He came into my office and he began to just pour his guts out. Now, preachers get these stories all the time. And we have to sit there in our preacherly wisdom and decide whether this is a legitimate story or not. We're being taken advantage of or not. We have to do that because we're not as good at sowing as the sower is. So we make decisions about who we're going to help and who we're not. This young man came in and we spent a lot of time together. And over the course of the rest of this year, we've been spending a lot of time together. And on November 7th, he is going to share a witness at our church that I'm very excited about. I apologize to the praise team because they're going to hear it on November 7th. And I'm going to just share a little bit, just a small part of that. It's a young man who was raised by parents who regularly used illegal drugs in their home. And at the age of 12 or 13, invited their children to begin doing that. So since he was that small. They gave in regularly to their addictive tendencies, and the reason that he found himself in my office was because he found his way to the casino one too many times and gotten himself into a load of debt and a hole that he felt like he could not dig himself out of. We began worshiping together. I began referring him to other places to occupy his time and to focus his energy. And at some point in time, someone in my office said, "You sure are spending a lot of time on this one fella. I don't think there's going to be payoff on that." Perhaps she might have been right. Except for